Welcome to another edition of Jet Setting. Paul Friesen, Scott Billick, both here with the Winnipeg Sun. Let's talk about coming off the Christmas break.
Sure.
Merry Christmas, everybody. The Jets are coming off the Christmas break after going on to it with a bit of a thrashing that they got. What do they got to do here to kind of, put that behind them and kind of use the rest that they got?
Take a look at who's across the ice from them. St. Louis Blues back-to-back here these next two games, and there's no better way to get yourself out of the Christmas funk, get the turkey out of your system than seeing the team that knocked you out of the playoffs last year and a Central Division rival, a team that's going to be a handful, even if they're coming off a Christmas break of their own. So I think it shouldn't take long, a period or so at most, for the Jets to put the holidays behind them, as they say. Get back to heavy hockey.
Right, and there is going to be quite a bit of heavy hockey coming up with this home and home. Obviously, the Blues are here on Friday night, and then on Sunday the Jets play them again, and then they're off to Colorado for a New Year's Eve date.
Right.
And then they come home, play Toronto, and then they go on the road, and they're playing Toronto, Boston, Montreal, and Minnesota on that road trip as well.
Yikes.
You talked to Paul Maurice today about the schedule. What did you glean from it?
That they're fully aware, he's fully aware of the heavy schedule to come. All playoff teams, I think we figured out here these next 2 weeks.
I believe so. Most of them, if not all of them.
Pretty much, a division heavy. As you mentioned, St. Louis, Colorado, Minnesota's in there. It's funny though, interesting, some of the players aren't aware of the schedule. Some were. Nathan Beaulieu, fully aware of what's to come and called it a real test for them. Patrick Laine, not a clue beyond St. Louis. Blake Wheeler, not a clue beyond St. Louis. At least so they say. We'll take them at their word.
Right.
And that's typical player mentality, right? Some will be one game at a time, one trip at a time, and other guys might look ahead and plan ahead. That's not unusual. But it's almost Beaulieu called it a measuring stick for this team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is. It's Western heavy. The Eastern-Western difference in game is quite significant. So it's a Western heavy game that's going to really, it could set them up to be in good shape here,
right.
At the All-Star break, and it could put them behind the eight ball if they struggle during it. So it's a pretty key stretch.
Yeah. And you mentioned Blake Wheeler, and he was not as forthcoming, I suppose, about the schedule, but he's been pretty good on that second line coming in. Paul Maurice talked about it this morning, talking about obviously good in the face-offs, good down low, what you'd want from your second line center, and he's been doing that. What have you seen from that line? How has it kind of come together over the last, I guess almost 2 months now?
I think the Wheeler part is probably the more predictable part. Even though he moved to center, it's still pretty predictable. You know what you're getting at him. He's done it before, and he's the veteran that he is. It's the other two guys, the wingers, that Roslovic and Ehlers, that you weren't sure where their games are going to be this season, but they've taken a pretty significant jump, I think, in consistency and a defensive play and just overall 200-foot game, still able to generate the way we know skilled guys like that can. But they don't hurt you as much as maybe they used to, right? And Roslovic with a lot more minutes than he's used to, and he's handled it fairly well. And Ehlers especially, though, to me, his fancy skating play at times stood out of this team. Right? It was the outlier, the guy who did things differently, and now he works more straight ahead and doesn't turn the puck over and hurt his team as much as in his younger years. So he's taken, I think, a real big jump, and that's made that second line something you can depend on, even if it's not clicking, even if it's not producing. They're not hurting you. So.
I agree. And I felt that this season with that line, or at least with Ehlers, he came into the season like that. For Jack Roslovic, it's still always been, not always, but it's been a bit of a it's been a tough go sometimes for him, and still learning. But I think Blake coming into that line and having those guys moving in one direction has kind of helped both of them.
Blake said today Jack is still kind of figuring out the player he is,
right?
Who he is as a player. He's got incredible quickness and skill.
Yep.
But is he another Kyle Connor? Is he something between
right.
Connor and he's not an Ehlers really, but he's got a lot of the shiftiness Ehlers has too. So he's still learning that.
Yep. For sure. Oh, awesome. Another edition of Jet Setting for Paul Friesen. Scott Billick. Thanks again for watching.